Hi there mate, how's it going? It's Benja here, and this is a breakdown and review of 1883 episode 10 titled This Is Not Your Heaven, which is the season finale. You better grab your tissues for this one because things get quite emotional as we say goodbye to multiple characters to wrap up the season. We begin in Fort Casper where Elsa passes out at the gates, and unfortunately for her this isn't much of a fort, it's practically been abandoned. That's what the doctor tells Shea and James after examining Elsa's wound, saying that they should head back to Fort Laramie because he can't treat her here. Well, to be fair to him, Elsa can't be treated anywhere because even if her liver repairs itself, the infection has taken hold of her body and it'll be impossible for her to survive. That's because the Lakotans dip their arrows in manure and you're out of luck if you get hit by one of those arrows. Additionally, the convoy can't stay here because the fort is run by the head of the Wyoming Stockgrowers Association, and our guys killed some of the association's deputies in episode 9, so if they're here when that's revealed, they will be killed. They can't just go to Laramie either because the bad guys would know to look there, and they could also track them on the Oregon Trail, where they would be easy targets. So instead, they'll go up north and follow the Bozeman Trail, which is why they will have to spend the winter in Montana. James and Shea both know that this is their only option. They know heading back to Laramie wouldn't save Elsa, so they decide to head up north. The pioneers don't like this plan and they want to see the journey through. They want to get to Oregon as soon as possible, which means that spending the winter in Montana isn't an option for them. Most of them don't listen to Shea's advice and their stubbornness leads to their demise. We see them get slaughtered later in the episode. Not all of the pioneers get killed though, because Joseph decides to stick with Shea and so does Noemi. Joseph's situation isn't getting any better, by the way. The venom is spreading and Thomas believes they have to amputate his leg. Joseph's wife is in an even worse condition. She can't drink water, she can't eat anything, so she's clearly a goner. Also, Colton and Wade head back to Texas because Shea decides to let the cattle herd go, and the herd was why this duo was here. So with the herd out of the way, they part ways with the convoy, but they make sure to say goodbye to Elsa, which was an emotional but also an upbeat farewell. Getting back to Joseph, they have to get him drunk before the amputation, and it takes more alcohol than it usually would because he is German. They eventually get around to the quote-unquote operation, and it's quite difficult to watch because they show you almost everything. And not only does Joseph lose a leg in this episode, but he also loses his wife. So his story is one of the most tragic ones in the show. Sure, a lot of other people died on this journey, but living and dealing with the pain of losing your partner all on your own in a foreign land with one leg might be the closest thing to death. Elsa gets out of the wagon right after Joseph's amputation, and she thinks it's only been a day since they left Fort Casper, but James informs her that it's been 3 days. We can't call this time dilation in the scientific sense, but it is similar to that from a personal perspective, because her illness is so overwhelming that her internal clock doesn't match up with reality. That's one of the many clues in this episode that warn us about her upcoming death. They never make you completely hopeless and you're still able to root for her to live, but they make it very clear that her chances are slim. They're not trying to shock you with a sudden death, but they're not making it impossible for her to survive either. They're just preparing you emotionally for the most likely outcome. The best stories usually don't try to manipulate their audience, they don't try to subvert the audience's expectations, and instead they set up storylines that have logical conclusions. And Taylor Sheridan's work here is a great example of that. He sets things up so beautifully that you're able to appreciate the logical payoff even if you're sad about a character's death. Maybe you wouldn't kill a certain character at the end of this story, but you're still able to like the ending because of the way it is crafted. That's why I think this finale was quite successful. Elsa and James have a lot of father and daughter time before we get to the payoff though, and in one of those scenes, Elsa says she's noticed the way her father has been looking at her, as if he thinks she's gonna die, and James tries to explain himself by saying that he's looking at her for what she is, the most important thing to him on this planet, and he says that comes with a lot of worry. He makes her believe that he doesn't think she will die, but that belief is crushed when they get to Crow territory. 3 crowmen approach the wagons while James is out hunting, and Elsa tries to ride away, but she is exhausted and falls off her horse. The Crow are not hostile, and they offer to help Elsa. Their leader is played by the brilliant Graham Greene. You might remember him from Dances with Wolves, but his best work in my opinion was on Longmire, which was a modern western series. You should definitely check out Longmire if you're looking for something to watch after 1883. Anyway, the Crow try to treat Elsa, but they agree that she is too far gone because of the dirty arrow. James makes it back to his family after Shea fires 3 rounds to call him, and James's conversation with the Crow leader is fruitful because he points James in the direction of Paradise Valley, and James wants to settle there. Also, the Crow leader says his people will take back that land in 7 generations, and this could be crucial for the Dutton family's future in the Yellowstone show, because I think the youngest descendant is a 6th generation Dutton. That is not our concern for now though, because Elsa finally realizes that she's gonna die for sure. She knows her father lied to her and all she wants is to choose the spot she dies at. James says she can do that, but they'll have to leave the wagons behind to get to Paradise Valley in time, before Elsa dies. James asks Shea to take care of his family and to tell Margaret about this. Shea does, and even though Margaret is angry at first, she comes to grips with the situation. So James and Elsa start their ride toward Paradise Valley, and Elsa eventually picks a spot and they rest against a tree. James asks his daughter if she wants a blanket and she says, "You be my blanket," and that was just an amazing line. It hit me right in the feels. They also talk about their first memories, and Elsa's memory is about her fascination with how smart birds are, because she saw them pecking at the ground after it rained, and they were pulling out worms because the rain softened the ground. So her curiosity and the way she observes the world was in place from a very early age. And funnily enough, she sees a bird right before she dies and says, "You birds sure are smart." And this means that her first memory and her last memory are quite similar. Elsa goes on to say she understands it now, meaning death, and she claims she's not scared. These are her final moments in this world, but it's not the last time we see her, because she later talks to us from another plane of existence, explaining what she meant. And I quote, "There's a moment where your dreams and your memories merge together and form a perfect world. That is heaven, and each heaven is unique." End quote. So if you were confused, there's no doubt Elsa is dead. Like I said, she's speaking to us from another reality, and that place is filled with good horses, open plains, wild cattle, and a man who loves her. It's always sunrise and there are no storms. She tells us she knows death now, that it smiled at her, and it was beautiful. Some of you might not see this as a happy ending, because in the traditional sense it isn't. The character dies, but we see and hear that she's got everything she's ever wanted in another reality. That's not going to be satisfying for everybody, but in my opinion, it's a great conclusion. We jump forward in time to learn that Joseph is still going strong, but unfortunately he is all alone. Thomas and Noemi find a place and settle in Oregon, so that duo get the happiest ending of season 1. And as for Shea, his roadmap was always clear. In episode 6, when he was talking to Elsa, he explicitly told us why he was on this journey. It's because he wanted to see the ocean, that's what his wife wanted, and he believed that a part of her still lived on inside him. He was hoping to show her the ocean in the hopes that she would appear to him. He realizes that dream and thinks the ocean is beautiful, and his late wife does indeed appear to him in the form of a hummingbird. You might think that the bird is supposed to represent Elsa, but because of what we know from episode 6 about Shea's dream that his late wife would appear to him, it's fair to assume that the hummingbird is the wife. By the way, hummingbirds usually symbolize messages from spirits. You might see them in other works of fiction, so that's why the writer chose this bird. After accomplishing his final goal in this world, Shea thinks it is time to leave and he offs himself on the beach. He was my favorite character on the show and it's incredibly sad to see him go, but I think his character arc makes a lot of sense. As for my thoughts on this episode and the season in general, I think the last couple of episodes got the show back on track, especially the season finale, because this one was brilliant. It's difficult to properly write a major character's death, let alone the deaths of multiple characters, and for Taylor Sheridan to handle these with this much competence was awesome to watch. I don't cry when I watch movies or TV shows, but this finale managed to make me slightly teary-eyed, let's say, and I assure you that is a rarity. That said, I couldn't care less about the nameless pioneers who got butchered, because they were never given enough screen time to make me care. I cared about Joseph because he was actually a quote-unquote character, while most of the other pioneers felt like they were just extras. From the middle of the season until the end of episode 8, the pacing suffered because of the show's hyper-focus on Elsa's love life. The back-to-back storylines of Ennis and Sam were just too much to handle, and it got boring for me. They either needed to space them out a bit or do only one love story, and that way they could have had some more time to develop some of these pioneer characters. It was also weird how we spent 8 episodes in Texas and Oklahoma, and then they got to Montana in 2 episodes. So I think they either needed to stick with that slow pace and continue this journey in season 2, or they could have kept the Texas and Oklahoma parts a little bit shorter. Those are my biggest gripes with 1883. Obviously you're getting tired of hearing this, but another issue I had was Elsa's monologue. But here's the thing, when I look back at season 1 and examine how our main characters evolved and how their stories ended, I can't help but love this show. Sure, the issues I mentioned came close to ruining the show for me, especially in the second part of the season, but I think the last 2 episodes remedied that situation. Shea went out on his own terms, Elsa lived a short but full life, and James learned that realizing his dream would have a massive cost. The brutal nature of this world and time period was depicted incredibly well. The costume department did a fine job for the most part, the cinematography was excellent, but the best part of this show was the acting. It was top-notch, and Isabel May has shown that she could be the next superstar actress. The action sequences never felt overwhelming because they weren't overdone, and crucially, the show managed to scratch my Western itch. It's time to reveal my rating now. You can see my scale on the left-hand side. I will give 1883 Season 1 an 8 out of 10. I think I would have given it a 7 if the finale wasn't this good, and conversely I might have given it a higher rating if the issues I mentioned weren't there. Well, what did you think about the finale and what would your rating for Season 1 be? Leave your comments down below, like this video if you've enjoyed this breakdown, and subscribe for more movie reviews and TV show breakdowns. That's it for now, take care and see you in the next video.